Like a lot of children in their late teens and early 20s and even in the 30s, I'll still call them all children, think, oh, they're afraid to talk about money because they're not wise enough. They're not experienced enough. They don't know what they're doing. They're following our hearts and we're in love and all this, and they're afraid of loss. They don't have a lot of self-esteem, and they're not secure in their own self-esteem, and they are insecure people, and they think, oh, if I have these conversations, you mean it doesn't work like Disney? But I'm under the illusion that it's happily ever after. We fell in love and it's all just going to work, right? No, it's not. You have to make intentional decisions to make all this stuff work. 1, 2, 3, go.
Jennifer Hardy, RR.
Believe it or not.
Welcome to the Lawyer Dana Show.
The Lawyer Dana Podcast.
Wow, we have a lot to talk about.
And we're going to do it right after this.
Welcome to the Lawyer Dana Podcast.
All right, for the benefit of the people that are picking this up, we are directly, it's 10 seconds ago I did the outro of the last episode. Here we go. It's going to be a different episode there, but for the benefit of the people that didn't catch the last one, here's where we are right now. Go. Your buddy in college got a prenup.
First, so if you didn't see the last one, super quick, 2 things in the prenup. Yeah, you get 100% control of all finances until her student loan debt was paid off. And 2,
because she was bad with money.
And she had a 200 student loan debt. And 2, he could have sex whenever he wanted, and she could not say no.
So first off, and my response to that was, that's actually common. And your response was,
are you kidding me?
No, I'm not. So, prenups. So here's what we're going to tell you about prenups. First, prenups are really good ideas, but not for what everybody thinks and why that I'm saying this. It's not divorce planning, although it sort of is, and yeah, it can be used and it's used and involved in that.
And it's not like Hollywood.
And it's not like what you think of, like, I'm protecting what's mine, all that, whatever. The best purpose of a prenup is to discuss how you're going to handle money. And if you're afraid that having a discussion about money or having a discussion about a prenup is going to cause you to not get married, then you're not ready to get married, and you shouldn't get married, and you're probably marrying the wrong person. Or you're just not ready to get married because you definitely need to have a conversation with your spouse about how you're going to handle money before you handle it. And whether you have nothing or whether you have something, it's a prenuptial agreement. It means the word nuptials is where you say I do and you get married. Those are your nuptials. Pre means before that, post means after that. And so what wise people do is they have that discussion and say, okay, we're going to write out our deal because, like, for example, anything that you earn in the state of Texas while you're married is community property. It belongs to y'all. And I'm going to talk about y'all as if it's a fictional or a real third person. So y'all is a single person, and it's you and your spouse 100% together, undivided. So in Texas, the property that you own prior to marriage is separate property. It's your separate property is 100% owned by you, and your separate property is 100% owned by you. And it continues that way during the marriage. And it also, anything that you receive by inheritance during the marriage. So if one spouse receives something from their parents as an inheritance, it's theirs only, and it's separate property when they receive it. But if the parents say to John and his wife, then it is community property or joint, separate, undivided, separate property. But basically, it belongs to them. But so previously owned property or inheritance, and these are in general. There's exceptions. Talk to your own lawyer about your exact situation. You can't take any of this as legal advice, but these are in general and kind of just background knowledge, educational things. And
would you recommend a prenup?
Well, hold on. Let me get to that because I
Okay.
want to explain property. So during the marriage, any income that either of you receive, whether it's from your job or from your job, belongs to both of you, 100% undivided. It belongs to y'all. So there is your property, there's your property, and then there's y'all's property. Y'all being like one person. It's 100% owned by you, and it's 100% owned by you, simultaneously undivided. And when you get a divorce, the court just divides community property. The court has no jurisdiction to divide separate property. Separate property is yours and it continues to be yours. However, there is a presumption when somebody gets divorced in Texas that everything is community, and if you have separate property, it's your burden to prove that it is separate property. So you have to have all your receipts and trace out all your finances if it's financial, or if it's like, I got the Corvette from Dad. Okay, is it the same Corvette? That's the Corvette? Okay, that's the tracing. You still have the same asset and it hasn't changed. But financial assets can change. And so if you've mixed separate and community, mixed it together, then you have to go through the complicated process of tracing it out and unmixing it. And there's like a dozen different ways that can be analyzed and traced out. There's like, okay, first in, first out. And it's community in, so you have separate property, and then community money comes into separate, and then so it's separate in first, separate out first, or how does it happen? And that's very complicated. Can't be all explained in the context of a podcast, or I could. It'd be a full season worth, and it'd be hours and hours, and it's very complicated. There's a class called Family Law, and where you study marital property in law school. It's a semester to even do that, and it's complicated. But in general, that's what happens. So what you can do is, in one of the things that either a prenup, which is before the nuptials, or a postnup, which is after the nuptials, you can say, we're not going to have community property, we're only going to have separate property, or we're not going to have separate property, we're going to have community property. So you can convert separate to community, you can convert community to separate, you can determine how you're going to handle money, you can determine these things are separate, and this is community, and anybody's income during the marriage in Texas, your income is community property. Whether it's from this person's, whether it's from this person's, and whether this person controls it and this person can't even, it goes into their separate bank account and this person can't access the bank account because they're not a signer on the account, they weren't set up on it, and the bank doesn't automatically do this. So they've got control of it, but the ownership is y'all, both undivided. So this person 100% owns the income that's gone in to the accounts. And a prenup or a postnup can say, well, if it's one of the options is that if I deposit it into an account that's got my name on it only, then it's separate. And that alone, that's how you determine what's separate and what's community. You can make all these agreements. And so a proper thing to do is talk about how you're going to handle money. You got a job and you've got a job. And we go, hey, to diversify, I make $100,000 a year, you make $100,000 a year. I'm okay with money and I like my type of risk. I like buying stocks. You're okay with money and you like your type of risk. You're okay with buying real estate. So I'm going to manage mine this way. You're going to manage yours this way. But we're going to say that's all community property, or we're going to say, no, this is separate property, that's separate property. And we're doing it to protect each other in the event that maybe there is a divorce, or if there's a death. Here's also what happens to our community property. Sometimes it's because you've got children, like you're both widowers. This has literally happened, and this is one of the most common types of people that choose to have a prenup or a postnup, is they're both widowers and they both have children from their original family, and they're like, well, we want to take care of each other, but we also want to take care of the kids and these different things, and so here is what we want to do. They are wise enough to know, I'm not at risk for having a money conversation. They're mature enough, like a lot of children in their late teens and early 20s and even in the 30s, I'll still call them all children, think, oh, they're afraid to talk about money because they're not wise enough. They're not experienced enough. They don't know what they're doing. They're following their hearts, and we're in love and all this, and they're afraid of loss. They don't have a lot of self-esteem, and they're not secure in their own self-esteem, and they are insecure people, and they think, oh, if I have these conversations, you mean it doesn't work like Disney? But I'm under the illusion that it's happily ever after. We fell in love and it's all just going to work, right? No, it's not. You have to make intentional decisions to make all this stuff work. So widowers who have been widowed before know, and a lot of times they'll have property and things, and they'll say, all right, if we've been married this long, here's how it's going to go, and then and then my part you know, like we're going into a partnership for now, but I've got some separate stuff here, and I want some of this stuff to go to my kids here, but I still love your kids and some of that stuff coming in. So we're going to designate, like, if, you know, if I pass away in the next 10 years, here's how it'll go. If I pass away in 20 years, here's how it'll go. I want to make sure, we both want to make sure each other is taken care of, and then we want to make sure the kids are taken care of. Right. And we want to make sure that my kids ain't going to fight your kids, because you got 3 kids on each side. 2 of those kids are probably going to be jerks. Yeah. You don't know what side they're on. I'm just telling you, this is just how the family dynamic that we've noticed happens. And it could be 1 on each side, it could be 2 on one side, or who knows. Mm-hmm. So you want to protect it from greed or evil, or this is a really good child who married a really wrong person, and their spouse is manipulative and gets them to do all this, and their spouse is trying to steal from the whole family. Right. Anybody that they possibly can. And they're, you know, like, there's all kinds of complicated things that aren't even on a lot of people's radar. And a lot of times when people come in for consultations with us, they're like, I never thought something like this could happen. Like, why did this happen to us? We have this, and they're like all this stuff. And I'm like, because it happens. Mm-hmm. And if you would have done this, come to see us before you have problems, so that we can look at your situation and identify, hey, you don't realize that you have this potential problem. But by the way, even if you did have, or even if you don't have, if you put these things into place, this is the proper estate plan that you need to do for where you are to protect you where you're at. And then when you guys grow to this next level, then we'll come in and make a little modification. Talk to us about every 5 years. We'll come in and look at it and go, yeah, it's great. And we go, what do you want to do? You know, in like 2 hours, we can determine you've got the perfect plan for, you know, it's been 5 years, you got the perfect plan for right now, and you got the perfect plan for the next 5 years, or maybe it's the next 3 years, but a good attorney will tell you, you don't need to do anything right now, if you don't need to do anything, or if you do need to do something, then they're going to tell you, and the price to do something like that right is inconsequential compared to what you have at risk, which is everything that you own. Mm-hmm. Everything that you own is at risk. Like, do you buy insurance for your house? How much is your per $100,000? Mm-hmm. Right? How much do you pay in homeowners insurance annually?
I pay more than I probably should, because my house has been hit by a tornado and had a flood.
How much do you pay? How much do you pay a year in homeowners insurance?
I think it's about $4,000.
So you pay $4,000 every year just to insure your home. Mm-hmm. An estate plan has your home, your retirement accounts, all the money that you own, everything else that you own, everything you own, and the future of your kids and all that, and you only have to pay $4,000 or $5,000, maybe $10,000 mm-hmm. if you depending on how big it is or whatever. I mean, it can be more.
Yeah.
If you have 8 figures worth of income, then you know. But mm-hmm. as a percentage, it's this tiny amount. $4,000, like $1,000 a year, basically, toward your estate plan. To have it updated and have it, I mean, it's the same as an insurance policy. Right. To make sure that doesn't get screwed up. It's just one of the things that you need to take care of. It's like you should have health insurance, automobile insurance, life insurance, an estate plan, and an umbrella policy mm-hmm. on you and your family.
Right.
And kids, you're graduating from high school, you need a will. You're going to have some stuff, and more importantly than the will, because maybe you don't have stuff, and your stuff's going to go to your parents if you're not married or whatever. Right. But what you need to have is powers of attorney, so that because your parents can't make medical decisions for you anymore, and they can't make financial decisions for you anymore. You need to execute a power of attorney for medical and a power of attorney for financial, assuming that you have parents or somebody in your life that you do trust. And that is also an important relationship. The fact that if you go through an estate plan.
Your parents might not be the option.
Right.
Some people don't have good parents.
Something that's important life thing for you to realize, and this is also a part of growing up, is when you go through and you try and go, okay, who am I going to, literally I have to choose somebody that if I'm incapacitated will have access to my money and make medical decisions for me.
Somebody you trust.
Part of that also is realizing who that person is, and then also keeping that updated. It's a kind of a good check and a good thing to do, to know and realize and go through that process. It will make you more responsible, because it brings to you and makes it a reality of the decisions that you actually have, That a lot of times you're la la la, I'm not going to pay attention, and like you're not actually maturing into a proper adult that you are.
Right.
And if you're thinking of things like when you're like, it's not just, oh, I like that girl, or oh, I'm going to mess around with that girl for the sake of messing around with, or guy, whatever. That person is, would I want to exercise a power of attorney to let this person make a medical decision for me or a financial decision for me? That's a better screening mechanism. And if the answer to that is no, I don't care how much you like them. They're not the right person for you. Next,
Right.
move on, and find that person if you're going to do that. And especially if you don't have your parents, like you have to start having trusted relationships, or you go hire an attorney, and you say, you're getting the medical power of attorney. Here are my preferences. Do this, because people hire our law firm to be able to do that. They would let Daniel Bomer, who by the way is the person who makes mine. Like Daniel's number one, you're number two. For me and Summer, besides each other. Summer's number one, but if something happens just to me, but if something happens to both of us, Daniel makes those decisions, then you make the decisions.
Oh, wow. Thanks, Dana.
And then Brenda.
I didn't know that.
Yes, you did.
I didn't
Daniel
know.
knows.
Daniel knew, not me.
See, one of the problems you have as a lawyer is actually you do the worst job on yourself. You always do the worst job on yourself. Like, because for all of our clients, we notify and have letters and all that sent, but we've cut corners on my own thing. The good thing that we haven't cut corners on is like we have insurances. We have Keyman insurance on Daniel. Actually, Summer, I think yesterday was getting Keyman insurance on you.
Oh, yeah. I've been answering questions for somebody.
Yeah. So the whole back to the whole reason for watching this. He is to have sex whenever he wants. You can't say no to sex. Okay, that is the most messed up thing that I think may exist in the legal industry. And people put that in. It's not a thing. It's not enforceable.
You know what?
I mean, it's
The fact
something.
she
Hey, you
signed
agreed to it and signed
She
to it.
agreed
Yeah,
to
it's not anything that's enforceable. It could potentially, if you don't have a severance clause saying that if any part of this agreement is found unenforceable, that the remainder of the provisions in the agreement remain in full force and effect. Because that provision is unenforceable, if you don't have a severance clause in there, then the whole rest of it becomes unenforceable, and it's all thrown out, and you don't have a postnup or a prenup. And that gets to another thing of like, people are like, oh, I want to do this myself. There's a website that's out there that says, and I was looking at this yesterday, it says, divorce documents, $300, and guaranteed acceptance by all courts. Do you know that the court, by law, has to accept every document that's ever filed into it?
Yeah.
I could file the Declaration of Independence into a case, and the court has to accept it.
Now you know. Now you know.
But probably
Don't
you're
be
going to
paying
have something that
$300.
shouldn't be in there that is, and something that needs to be in there that's not, because you don't know what you don't know. Do you know that it takes longer to become an attorney than it does to become a commercial airline pilot? And if you wouldn't try to land your own airplane, don't try and do your own legal work where everything. So what are you trying to save? Let's say your whole thing is going to cost you $20,000. Which is extremely expensive for an estate plan. We hardly ever have, anybody, unless you have 8 figures, your estate plan's not going to be over $20,000. We have them, but they are for extremely rich people. Some of our
multiple properties, multiple
I'm
assets.
talking, what do you own? Well, let's walk outside, and I own everything that you can see in every direction. Like, if you're not somebody that has that, then your estate plan's not going to be crossing the $20,000. But even if it did, and you own $1 million, you know what $20,000 is? That's 2% of everything that you own. So for the maximum benefit of 2% that you're going to get, you're going to risk everything that you own if you do it wrong. And we have had people that screw that up and come to us and go, hey, Dana, I just drank this poison. I let this snake bite me. Is that going to be a problem? Yeah, I can pump your stomach and fix it. I hope. You might die and you ain't going to like it. Or would you rather come in and go, hey, Dana, should I drink this poison? And I go, that's poison. Why would you do that? Don't drink that. And now we're going to go out and play some golf and have a nice afternoon. That'll be $95. Paid Emily on the way out, please. Or it's going to be, oh, wow, Emily, grab the stretcher. We have to operate right now. We're pumping their stomach, and I might have to remove a couple of organs, and they're going to have a colostomy bag for the rest of their life. But they'll live, and it's going to be $75,000.
Yep.
That's the difference. Like, do not try to underbuy legal services that you need. If you underbuy legal services, so let's say you should pay this much, and instead you try to pay this much, and you get the massive savings of this little bit, and you risk everything that you own, right? Massive little savings down here, and so massive little savings because you underbuy legal services. So this is your benefit, and this is your risk. Why would you do that? Now let's talk about overbuying legal services, right? You pay this much too much, so it's better, instead of trying to save a little bit, it's better if you even overpay a little bit because you don't risk any of this. It's legal services. It's not like trying to use a coupon at McDonald's.
Yeah.
You get the best lawyer that you can afford.
So back to my question is, do you recommend prenups?
Yes.
You do.
If you go with the right attorney and you approach it as if this is a healthy conversation where we're going to facilitate y'all agreeing on how you're going to handle your money, and then if we need to, we'll write up a document. So we want to explain, here's what the default laws of Texas are, here's how it works, and does that work for y'all, or can y'all operate under that, or would you like to have a written agreement that says, no, that won't work for us, we want to do it like this, and are there intentional reasons based on y'all's goals why you would want to do that?
Well,
and sometimes there is, because I've recommended to people, and just in the consultation that we've talked about, like they've paid for an hour of my time, and we advise them, they understand, they know, and they've equipped themselves with a tool of the information, knowing what this is and how it works. They don't operate out of ignorance or worse, misconceptions about how it works, because if they don't understand how it works, they may make a mistake that causes them tax problems or financial problems or security problems that destroy the marriage. So it's actually divorce prevention in the way that our law firm handles it. And it's a tool to help them have a good and healthy marriage.
So
that's the best way to do it. And then if you happen to want to do an agreement one way or the other that says you're going to do this or whatever, then we can write it up. But it's not this like, we're protecting you because we think this marriage is going to go out and you're a gold digger and you got money and we're going to, like all, it's not that. It's not what most people think.
So I was watching a show. I'm not going to name the show. It was kind of like.
If I figure out the show, I'm still going to name this show.
It was a reality TV show.
Oh, really?
Yeah, and there is.
Those are really not real. Those are really problematic.
I know,
Are you telling me a real story?
Yes.
Really?
Yes.
Really?
There's a local.
How many times do you think I
attorney.
can say something that's real in this podcast?
I need something to throw at him. Yeah.
Really?
There.
Did you really throw this at me? Are you for real? All right.
It's like I threw my
I'll really
bouquet.
stop now.
So.
I know I'm going to be the next one to get married.
So anyway, no, I was watching a reality TV show, and it was actually a local situation. It was a Collin County couple.
Okay.
Yeah, and it's a actual local attorney who met with one of the couples.
I think I know who this is.
Okay. So here's my question. It was about a prenup, and I want to know your opinion on the situation because
so I haven't seen this. Don't tell me what they did, but ask me.
I'm not going to tell you what they did.
You can see what my.
So basically, he had a business. He has a business, and he's made a lot of money out of the business.
Okay.
She has worked for him. He paid her $500 a week as his assistant, but
that's the job. If that's accurate for the job, I think you should pay people for the job they actually do. But
so he paid her $500 a week, but she lives with him. And he also gives her access to his credit card. He pays all the bills that she lives at, and she can shop and do whatever.
Are they dating?
They're dating.
So mistake number one: do not live with someone that you're not married to.
Yes, I agree.
We could do a couple of episodes of this show on that issue, and we should. Brenda, make a note. get married.
I will
half
say
those marriages don't
some
work.
of our divorces that we've dealt with has been, oh, we lived together for 6 years, we got married last year, we're ready to get a divorce. We've seen a lot
It's-
of that. And it's
the
like,
problem
is
is
you're
because
kind of
everybody
blown away,
they don't
too.
have the proper conversations,
Right.
and then there's just something about it
yeah.
that just makes it not work. Summer and I did not live together before we got married. Did you and Daniel live together
No.
before you got married?
I wouldn't. He tried to get me
I
to.
think that a vast majority of the actual healthy marriages, not Rick's, but Rick has a healthy marriage that didn't do this, but I think a very large, I don't know actually what the statistic is, it's just been my anecdotal observations, is that when people have not lived together before they get married, that they have a greater chances of success.
Right. So back to this couple. So she's discouraged. She wants to make more money. She feels like she's done so much for the company. She's helped him build this company. She asked him for a raise. He pretty much denies it because he's like, I give you all this. Like, you can go shop whenever you want. You have my black card, all this other stuff. So in the meantime, you know, they're kind of talking about marriage. And he brought up getting a prenup. And she got extremely upset about it. Then she went to go meet with an attorney and was asking questions about the prenup, like, is she entitled to the business? Would she be entitled, if she were to get married to him,
The
would
business
she
would be
be?
separate property because it existed prior to the marriage, but the income from the business would be community property because income from separate property is community property. So like if he had a rental house that he owned prior to the marriage, the rental house itself is separate property. But the income, the rent, is community property. And to the extent that, let's say he had a $300,000 rental property, and on the date of marriage, that he owed $100,000 on the mortgage, and he, during the marriage, pays off the $100,000. Well, he paid it off. If he paid it off with community money from his income, or he used the rent money to pay off the house, then the principal reduction of the $100,000, the community is entitled to reimbursement to that. So let's say the community, that $100,000 comes back into the community, and then the community is going to be divided. And the division of marriage is, in Texas, it's not a pure 50-50, although a rule of thumb, and in general, we use 50-50, because a lot of times it's 50-50. Like if somebody's committed adultery, if you work really, really hard, you might get 51-49. Like,
Oh, wow.
they'll give you a
Okay.
tiny little bit, because all the judges are like, well, everybody gets a divorce for a reason, and both people are probably at fault. And so you're getting a divorce, okay, 50-50, move on.
Right.
But the community would be entitled to that $100,000 reimbursement, and which then gets divided, so it'd be $50,000 each. Or if you're gonna agree to whatever for whatever reason, like, and the biggest factor that I notice that the courts do is relative earning capacity. She gets out of the marriage and she's going to be able to make $500 a week, and he gets out of the marriage and is able to make $50,000 a week. They can't divide the separate property, so they cannot divide the business. And money that's contained in the business that hasn't been paid out yet, retained earnings in the business, is owned by the business, not by him. And since that is all separate property until it is paid to him as income. Income to the business itself is still separate because that belongs to the business, and then the business is his separate property. So, but if he pays himself a check out of it, takes a distribution or a salary or money out of the company, that's earnings, and then that's community, and that's divisible.
So if he were to put in a prenup, the business is his, and she signed the prenup, the money made out of that business is separate, though. It's different. No?
That doesn't address the issue, because we're still the business itself is the separate property.
Right.
You would have to address the income from the business. One way that you could do that is say any retained earnings that are in the business, or to the extent that the assets exceed the liabilities in the business, then she will be paid X percentage, let's say it's 50%, she would be paid half of that money. So let's say today, and one of the ways you could make that deal is say, all right, today the business has $1 million in it, but if we were to close up the business right now and pay all the liabilities, the business would have to pay out $500,000 and lay everybody off and pay the unemployment or pay these taxes or pay this loan off or whatever.
Right.
And so there'd be $500,000 left. And so that's on the date of marriage. If you have something above that, you could say half of that, or you could even say that money is there, or you could say whatever you want. It's basically a contract, and you can do whatever you want as long as it's not against the criminal laws of the state of Texas or a danger to a child. One of the things you cannot put in a prenup or a postnup is anything to do with child custody. You can't agree we're going to have 50-50 custody. Cannot contract about that. It's against public policy.
That makes sense.
Because what happens if one of you decides to abuse the child
Exactly.
and shouldn't have, so that's something that's up for a decision. Now, if you're going to file for divorce or you're going to file a child custody case, then you as parents can agree, and a judge cannot override an agreement by two fit parents. If y'all agree in writing, the judge can only override that if the judge determines that it is not in the children's best interest for the judge to agree to that instrument. And so some judges will say, I got an agreement, I'm not even going to bother. Y'all two are the parents, y'all know better than me, Johnny government, Uncle Sam ain't going to look into you're both responsible for that kid. And if y'all say that's 50-50 and y'all have signed this, and neither one of you is screaming coercion or they held a gun to my head and made me sign it, like I don't have any evidence of that, most judges will, you can go in and say, Your Honor, it's in the best interest, we agree that it's in the best interest of the children for us to have this, what we wrote down and we both signed and agreed to. Great, thanks. Glad you guys got that resolved on your own without having to come to me to make my best guess about whatever I think is presented in court. If, let's say there's an agreement and one of you comes back and says, no, they literally held a gun to my head and made me sign that. I do not agree with that at all. And now that there's a bailiff here and we're sitting in court and I feel like I'm safe enough, I can tell you the truth. And you swore me to tell the truth and I'm telling the truth. You can bust a deal because this is not in the best interest of the children. Or if it is, okay, you guys sign that joint custody and then the following day, one of you beat the heck out of the kids and it's clear, oh, we didn't even know, should I honor that? And the other person brought this to my attention in court. The judge doesn't have to honor that particular provision. But on a property division, technically that's a contract the moment that they sign it, even though the judge hasn't signed it yet. And they can attempt to revoke, but that's a lot stronger deal.
My question is, if she didn't sign the prenup, like she decides, no, I don't want to do this, and they get married, like he's okay with it, they get married 5 years down the road, they decide they're not going to stay married, they're going to get a divorce. Does she have rights to that business now? No.
Not if it was formed before the marriage, because it was his separate property.
Even if she says she helped build that business.
Correct. She's helping build this guy's business and she's taking $500 a month as her payment. And if she thinks she has a wage claim or an ownership claim, or like he's committed fraud, because Your Honor,
the other attorney said she had rights to the business, so that's why I was curious.
If the business was created during the marriage, or for example, when they lived together, if they met the requirements for informal marriage in Texas, informal marriage, that's what's common law marriage. Common law means that it wasn't written down by the legislature. There's no actual law, but judges commonly would hold. And why would they do it? Because everybody knows that they do it, and this is what they commonly do. So it's called common law. And this one court did it, and so every court since then has been queuing off of them. Or there's a Supreme Court case that's called common law. And so the courts would hold. But in order to be
common law, don't you have to be referring to each other as husband and wife?
In Texas, there's actually not really common law anymore because the legislators wrote it up into a law. It's called informal marriage. And it's not anything that relates to the state of the marriage itself. It is how you became married. And once you became married, you're just as married as if you would have had a marriage license and gone through the ceremony, signed it, and filed it, and done all that. And there are 3 elements. Element number 1, are you cohabiting for any length of time in the state of Texas? It can be 10 minutes. If you intend, you walk in and go, all right, we've moved in, and 10 minutes later you have a fight and move out. No, you cohabited for that 10 minutes. Or especially if you did overnight, it can be in a hotel room. That can suffice. Next, you agree that you are presently married in the state of Texas. And the third is you hold yourself out to anyone else as being presently married. And that can be, we posted on Facebook, we told the pizza delivery guy who came to the hotel that we moved into that night, and we agreed that we were married, and we were serious about it. I wasn't pretending. I just changed my mind the next day. But I intended for us to be married that day. So cohabit any length of time in the state of Texas. Agree between the two of you that you are presently married in the state of Texas, and hold yourself out to others. So if you file an income tax return with each other, that is that is very strong evidence and very hard to overcome. If you filed married, that you are married, either that or you committed tax fraud. So what do you want? We're not really married and I lied, or we committed tax fraud, or we're married. But that is referred to as informal marriage in Texas, which is kind of what everybody thinks of as common law. But if you meet those elements, you're married. Change your mind the next day, you need a divorce. You have to get a divorce. Or you can get an annulment in Texas if you, like for example, if something's procured on fraud, like I told you my name was Joe Smith, that's not who I really am. Or it can be something along the lines of, I'm a millionaire, therefore you marrying me, and turns out I'm broke, and you find out as long as you cease living together as spouses, upon finding that knowledge, and because of that lie that you were told, you would not have gotten married in the first place. We can actually get an annulment. And in Texas, for a divorce, there's a mandatory 60-day waiting period. There is no waiting period for an annulment. And so if we see that we have grounds for an annulment, we can write up a final order granting the annulment and have that granted. I think the fastest one I ever did was within 24 hours. They had the marriage annulled, because we basically stayed up all night, wrote it all up, and did everything, and we got both sides to sign it. We got the side that lied to admit that they lied, and we negotiated the annulment, and we've done several of those. Would she be entitled to the business if the business was created during the marriage, or if she's saying, I know we didn't get a formal marriage, but we got informally married, we're married, and he started that business during that process, then you got an argument, were we really married? And then if we were, then is that business community or separate property? And so the only way that business would be that divisible, or that she's entitled to it, would be under those circumstances. Or perhaps he took community money, invested into his separate property business. Just like if you paid money he had a rental property ahead of time, and he used community earnings, even the rent from that is community money because it's earnings. If he used community income and put it into his separate property, then the community is entitled to a reimbursement. So maybe the attorney was thinking, oh, he's put community income, like he earned money, distributed it to himself, and then puts it back into the business. Then it became community. It was separate money while the business owned it. Actually, it wasn't either. It was the business's money, and then it's distributed to him, and then he puts the money back into the business. Well, when it was distributed to him as income, that's community money. And then if he put community money into his separate business, then the community is entitled to a reimbursement of how much money that was supposed to be. And so you basically operate as if that money is put back, but he's already taken some. So if he put $100,000 of community money into the business, then there's $100,000 that's left. So let's say there's $200,000. He takes $100,000, puts it into his separate property business. then there's $100,000 left. Well, the way we would operate as attorneys is we would say, well, there's supposed to be 200,000. He's already taken 100. This 100,000 goes to her.
Right. So I guess the big point here is prenups aren't bad.
Prenups can both be bad and both be very good. It can be very, very bad and very evil, or it can be very, very good and a blessing. It all depends on the lawyer that you hire and on how they approach it and what they're doing, why they do what they do. The fact of what they do is you got a prenup, right?
Right.
If you're doing it in order to be something that gives security in a proper, good, balanced way, and you're doing it for good purposes, the reason why you do it, then a prenup can be a total blessing. It can help you, it can be used as an instrument for a healthy marriage. Or if it is something that is going to be like, you have to have sex with me anytime that I want, and it's used as an instrument of oppression, it's used as an instrument to say, if we get divorced, you get no money. And that's basically imprisoning them or keeping them financially constrained to where a healthy marriage is something where if either one of them can choose to leave at any point in time and they'll have security either way, then you know that they're together with you because they want to be together and because the marriage serves both of you. But if the marriage becomes an oppressor, one of you becomes an oppressor and the other becomes the oppressed, it's master and slave. That's not a marriage, and that's evil. And that's what a lot of people think that a prenup serves to do. And if it does serve to do that, that's evil, and I want no part. I will not write that type of prenup. I will not allow that to happen. I have to have a good, and that's why client screening is important. We don't take jerks. We don't take people that are in for revenge. We listen to our clients, and I know within 5 minutes. And a lot of times if I find that there's somebody like that, I turn their case down. I'll refund I'll be off the phone with them in 5 to 15 minutes.
Yes.
And I will refund their initial consultation fee. No harm, no loss. We're not a good fit. One of the purposes of the podcast is that people like that, don't hire me. Don't call us. Stay away. I want people that want to use the processes in healthy ways, because we want all of our clients to live healthier lives because they hired us than if they hired any other law firm that's out there. And I want to give the knowledge base, every bit of knowledge that we possibly can. We are putting it all out there. We spend a day out of the week filming this stuff and brain dumping everything that we possibly can. My best, Jennifer's best, all of our guests' best. And that is why we're asking you to tune into the next episode of the Lawyer Dana Show. I'm Dana Palmer with Jennifer Hardy Har Har.
Join us.
Like us, subscribe, send us the
Yes.
little coin things or whatever it is that you do. Super chat, I don't know, whatever it is. Help support us. Buy some merch.
Tell us.
We're going to make a Jennifer Hardy Har Har shirt.
Oh my
We got to get
gosh.
this good picture. It's going to be like a Steve-O shirt, I think. It's going to say Jennifer Hardy Har Har. Something. And if you want to design that shirt, let us know. You'll have
Yeah.
to transfer us to copyright so we can put it out there. But yeah, we're
And
going to
if
do
you
it.
have a topic that you want to suggest to
Oh, yeah.
us, let us know. Like,
Yeah. And
comment
and
below.
we're even going to do live. Now, nothing that you hear on this show is legal advice. Nothing constitutes an attorney-client relationship. But we look forward to...
But if you need legal advice, give us a call.
Yeah. And if you want to hire the Palmer Law Group, she's the admin for that. And you can still get me to do consults for
And you can call
And-
us at 214-789-4735.
Although I don't know if we should put that on the podcast or not. We should?
Why?
Okay. Well, I don't know.
Why not?
We're going to have a lot of people answering the phones if this goes well. But we do have a lot of people answering the phones. But
I can hire more people. Hiring someone to answer the phone is not hard. It's
yeah,
the other stuff.
and that's why you're here. So we'll see you on the next episode.
The Lawyer Dana Podcast.